All right, we are back to the Dawn,
And the queue where we play a
episode 3.
what, dude?
Dude, just do it. Go for it, man.
My anti proverb. You ruined the flow. Okay, let's start from the top, Octo.
Oh
Let's
my
do
God, you're
it.
gonna edit this crap? Okay.
Go.
All right, welcome back to the Dawn.
And the queue where we play away from open spaces. There we go. And no, I'm not
All right.
editing it. That's all being kept in there.
All right, all right.
Wait,
Episode 3, we are finally back. Finally here with our third host.
who is this?
Hello.
Wow.
Yeah, who
Sorry it
is
took
this?
me so
Introduce
long to
yourself.
get on this show. All right, my name is Neil, and I got into Go in middle school. My brother had this really cheap Go set that was, the kind with like tiny little plastic stones and like a really crappy board that is really thin. And I tried to understand the rules by reading the manual, which was pretty much impossible. Like I think that is harder than becoming 9 Dan is understanding the rules from that manual. And then I decided, okay, I'm gonna go on like the internet and see if I can figure it out. So I went to Yahoo Games, which at the time
Oh
had a
yeah.
Go server. There was a Yahoo Games Go server. And after playing some really horrible games there, I went to the local Go club, talked to some, angry old men, and they slowly taught me the rules, and I've been improving at a slow rate and being relatively mediocre for the last, I don't know, 20 years or something. So that's my story.
And to quickly add for the viewers, Neil is a friend of ours in a Discord, and like we had said in the past, we had wanted him as another host to the show, but someone was getting married. So,
Sorry.
how has that
Never
improved your
forgot.
Go game? Has it at all?
I would say that it has kept my groups together. We're no longer divided.
I
No, it's actually really not helped my game at all.
I would completely disagree. I think that break from Go actually like changed you.
Oh,
Because you beat
really?
me. Remember, you beat me a while,
It's
like a
like
month or two ago.
a month or two.
It kind of shocked me.
I thought it was like last
That's
week.
true.
It wasn't last
It was
week.
like
It
it
was
was
a
like two
couple
or three
weeks
weeks ago.
ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay,
2
whatever.
weeks. But I
Few
mean,
weeks ago.
one game is one game. Hey, I'll take the win. But one game you can take one game off of somebody basically anytime.
Is that what you say to yourself,
Anyway.
Neil, after I beat you in a game?
Yes, yeah. So it's like one game. It's just one game.
you're, you're
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm getting married. I can't play Go now.
Pretty much. But I've gotten my revenge, so all is well.
And
Also, Neil isn't just a Discord friend. He's also a fellow streamer, although he doesn't really stream very much. But I remember watching Neil when he was around 8Q, I think. Played a
Yeah,
lot of
I used
PandaNet
to.
back then.
I was streaming a lot back in the day, and I would love to get back to streaming. I think this might be a good time for me to do it because the problem I was having with streaming originally was that I would get really distracted, but I would also care more about the games because not only am I responding to chat, but people are watching me lose, and so I would get really upset when I would lose, and I was just like, this is a bad combination. But recently, I've just stopped caring as much about that, so could be a really good time for me to get back to the streaming game.
Yeah.
oh yeah. um, I guess more to the intro. So as we can see, or the viewers can see by the rank in the little nameplate, you're 1Q. You're so close to Donhood, Neil.
Rotodon.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long time. At this point, I think of myself as a sometimes Don. Like I definitely have been one Don on KGS before,
Mm.
and won a game. I have played at a one Don level, I'm sure, multiple times. So, I feel like there's a small part of my soul that is a little Don.
So, Neil, how would you describe your style?
Um, it's a good question. I think that my style used to be like the overplay style, where I would just overplay constantly. Um,
So you'd be
I
bad.
Yeah, basically. But I would say nowadays my style is a little bit more like I really like territory typically, and I I also I really enjoy fighting. I would say that recently I haven't really quite learned how to integrate my love of fighting into my newer, calmer game. Because, back in the day when I was overplaying all the time, it's easy to get into fights. And sometimes I would even win the fights. But now it's like I love fighting, but I sort of like don't get into fights as often because I found that I play a lot better if I just try to do like more simple and straightforward types of moves.
Go figure.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that for you. I think that's just like something like everyone can really do to help themselves
Yeah.
improve. But
Yeah, I mean the way that I've sometimes heard it described is like as opposed to playing good moves, it's about just not playing bad moves. Like how long can you go without overplaying? That was one of the things that helped me solidify my like 1Q ranking is that I was able to go further into the game without playing something completely absurd.
wouldn't be me. Um, what's your favorite part of Go, Neil?
um I think okay, one thing that I love about Go, I mean, I love Sumego because Sumego is kind of, if you ever liked logic puzzles or anything like that, if you like crosswords or math problems or whatever, it's like just such a fun form of logic puzzle that also makes you better at the game. So I love that part. But I also really love that Go is a game where the better you get at it, the deeper it becomes and the more you get to appreciate about it. I think that now I have like so much more appreciation for the game than I used to because I get into these more complex situations and I can kind of understand on a deeper level like what's going on and how amazingly complicated it really is.
Yeah, I two things. One, this is why you're here to balance us out. We both hate Sumego, and you're like, here,
Yes.
Sumego is good. But I definitely agree with you about like the more you understand the game, the more enjoyable it is to like look at these like more complex games and really understand like what is happening. Like
Hmm.
I feel I'm kind of at a point where I can look at some pro games and be like, I'm understanding for the most part what is happening. There are still moments where like I'm completely lost. This makes no sense to me. But like before, like when I was around like 10Q, I was like, some of these moves don't make any sense. I don't understand why you just tanuki or why you're making these like
Yeah.
little trades. Whereas now I'm like, yes, I appreciate this is very Honte. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I have stuff like that I'm still kind of digging into, where you're playing sort of probing moves or you're playing moves that, by you responding, your opponent has made your move worth playing, stuff like that. Like it's a little bit more of a subtle concept that I didn't understand as much before I got to like my current strength. So there's still things like regularly that I run into where I'm like, ooh, that's a new idea that I'm getting a little bit more knowledge about.
hmm So last question for the intro. Who is your favorite Go Pro player?
Okay, so I think I keep changing my mind on this one. Um,
Yeah, we just had
like,
this
okay,
conversation.
I'm gonna like make this a multi-part answer. I'm sorry, I know that's illegal, but I would have said not that long ago. I would have said Shoshikun because I love the uh, practice of just like living small everywhere. Like it's very fun, but I'm also really bad at it, so I'm trying to like get away from doing that. So I'm gonna say that my favorite player, and this is purely just because their playstyle is so fascinating, is Shua. Shua is known as like one of the big pioneers of the Amashi style, which is sort of this style where you are. I'm going to totally butcher this, but it's a style where you're essentially playing a lot of stones to try to kind of like nullify what your opponent is doing, and you keep all of your groups in just enough danger that they're sort of like attackable, but you can still salvage it and kind of be flexible with like how you use your stones. So it's almost like you're begging your opponent to attack you, and then you're just doing such a good job of handling your stones that you end up sort of leaving your opponent without like much territory and without anything very useful. Actually, I think Kun is known as also a player who like uses the form of Amashi style. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know if I trust this description, just go look it up on Sensei's library. There's a very good, much better explanation of how it works. But it's really fascinating if you have someone strong explain like what it is.
Yeah, I think Chochukun for you makes sense on sort of a theoretical level, but I don't feel like you really play like Chochukun, or I don't even think you really play that style half the time.
I don't think so either. I think I used to try, and then I think I just got to a point where I realized that it was that I was sort of faking the style, and it was actually just making me die everywhere. I don't know who I play like now. I think I play like a very territorial style, and I really like to try to just like take territory early on, and then try to keep my opponent from making too much with their influence. Which is one of the reasons why I really get freaked out when people like love the influence style, because then they're like, "Oh, thank you for all this influence. I'm about to, beat you with it."
So, I'm reading Sensei's library right now. It says the as quoted from John Power, the aim of Amashi is to outlast the opponent, to let him take good points, but to follow hard on his heels by taking profit. Shua refined Amashi to a very high level as a strategy for white and no Komi games. The natural tendency with Amashi is for the game to become a contest between black's thickness and white's profit. It then says, that is, territory is taken in exchange for opponent's influence or big points, and influence is what is needed to attack. The Amashi player hopes to weather the attacks and effects of the opponent's influence or numerous big points. So you sound like a masochist, and like you just want people to attack you. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think this is the style that I would like to be good at, but
Mhm.
I'm not.
Yeah, when you were saying that, describing it, I was like, so you let them get influence and and live small. But then I hear you say, but then when they all get all this influence, I'm like, this is scary and sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, Octo, what are we talking about today?
Ooh, one of my favorite topics. So today we're going to talk about direction of play, specifically for the opening. So,
What
we're
is
gonna,
it? What is direction of
yeah,
play?
what is direction of play? So it's really just about sort of finding the best side, really, and we're gonna delve into that a little bit more as to what that means. Um, and we're gonna look at some Josekis. This isn't really a Joseki lesson video or anything like that. Josekis will be involved. Obviously, we're talking about the opening. Um, but I think a better question is like, why is it important? Because post AI, this post AI era that we live in, AI will tell you you can play anything you want in the opening, and you're losing maybe a tenth of a point. And sure, that's true for the AI. It's not true for us, so to speak.
Us mere
So
mortals.
yes, exactly. And well, I saw a pro do this. Yeah, well, the pros exist on some other ethereal plane that we have out we've aged out. That's the truth of it. Like we're too old. It's okay
Yeah.
too. That doesn't mean we still can't have fun. Um, but I actually think it's a matter of sort of efficiency because I think quite a few SDKs even get stuck in this place where their openings they're inadvertently playing so much bad direction of play. Their middle game suddenly becomes way more difficult than it needs to be. They might still be doing well in the middle game, but they've set up the middle game via the opening, via a kind of a subpar opening even, that it's just making their game so much more difficult than it needs to be. So the whole idea today will be about trying to intuitively discover how we should do direction of play in the opening. Okay.
Yeah, before we kind of dive into the board review stuff and the lesson, to add to that, I think, speaking from my experience where making this leap from 10Q to 6Q where I'm at right now, like you said, you can play a game where like your direction of play is kind of bad and AI will still say you're fine. But like you said, the games are just that much harder. And when I worked on my direction of play, it made my games like it felt like easy mode. Like I didn't have to worry as much about my groups because I'm like, oh, they're well connected, they're working together. My opponent has disjointed groups and they kind of all look dumb. Um, and then on top of that, there's like a trap almost for those who may only use like AI to help them review, where it's like, oh, the game was even up until move 60, and then it all fell apart, and it's like, yes, but you're also kind of you're just making the game harder for yourself, where you're forced into these sharper, more precise positions because your direction of play is just a bit wonky. Um, so yeah.
I also have one little thing I wanted to add, which is that while it is true that, AI basically says that, yeah, like most things are okay in the opening, and we're talking about these tiny little margins of like point differences between moves. There is sort of an opinion that AI has about the opening, which is that AI has told us that the corners and like the territory of the corners is like way more important than pros thought before AI came along. So a lot of like you know, the top pros who are trying to play like the AI programs will really emphasize like taking that corner territory, and they will really emphasize the corner, which is one of the reasons why nowadays you don't see a lot of those center splitting moves that were so common, back in the day, like back in the like 80s and stuff when the
Center.
Japanese
You mean like
pros
the
were playing.
side splitting moves?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
like if you have, two 4/4s and someone plays like a third line stone like right in the middle of those two stones
Yeah.
on that side of the board. So I just wanted
It,
to
it,
add
it
that
actually
in.
happens in one of the diagrams.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that that's like right or wrong, but I do think it's just an interesting, like, it's interesting to know what AI's sort of opinion, if you will, is about like how you should play the opening optimally.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Octo, but like part of what AI has said is the reason why AI values that territory so much is that it's so good at nullifying influence later on. It's like
Yeah,
it can get away with just magic. So that way, because of that, they're like, well, let's just take the points because this influence doesn't matter as much as people think. But when you're
right,
a lower level player, I mean, if you see a 6 stone wall, you're going to be a little a little bit scared, and it's probably going to make a lot of points.
right. Something else that needs to be said. Obviously, I'm not an expert. The stuff we're going to talk about today is kind of my own invention. It is heavily inspired, and I will point it out. In fact, I point this book out all the time. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about is heavily inspired by this particular book, Whole Board Thinking in Joseki. This book is super hard to find, and the Josekis in this book are outdated, but the book isn't even really about Joseki, I would argue. It is, but the whole board thinking aspect is very much direction of play. And I still maintain this is the greatest Joseki book ever written. So a lot of my ideas are sort of a retranslation of ideas that are not explicitly ever called out in this book. It's just things that I have tried to glean over time. Also, with very, very few exceptions, the stuff we're going to look at today is not meant to be some highly optimized AI vetted sequence or decision or anything like that. That's not the goal. Okay, I really the goal is there's about three goals I have for this. One, I want to try and convince you that this stuff can be very intuitive. In fact, I'm going to boil it down to basically two ideas. Okay, and we'll get into it. Basically two indicators, as I call them, to help you determine direction of play. Also, I want to try and reach those people who hate the opening, who can't stand Joseki. I'm not here to try and change your mind. What I want to do is show you actually how easy this truly is. Doing this opening direction of play is so much easier than you realize. You don't have to go learn a bunch of Josekis. Um, but most importantly, in conjunction with like the whole this isn't AI vetted, I really just want to show you how creative you can be. That's one of the most fun part of that. Like that truly is like the best part of Go. Just being able to pour your own creativity into a game. So I'm hoping this will help, get some of those creative juices flowing for you.
Hmm. You're
So,
definitely selling it. You're definitely selling it. I just want to put out there really quickly that my favorite opening book of all time that I recommend to people who want to brush up on the opening is Opening Theory Made Easy. I think
mhm,
that is like, it just really spells it out very simply. It covers a lot of ground and it doesn't steer you wrong.
absolutely.
Yep. Yep. I should review that book again.
Yeah, now who's getting called out?
Are we ready to look at the board now?
Yeah, yeah, let's dive right in.
All right, let's head on over.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're basically going to look at least half of these problems more or less from a corner position. And the way I want to sort of break this whole thing down is I'm going to divide this corner more or less into three positions here. So in reference to this corner, we have a left side. We have the corner, which I will still call the corner side for convenience, and then we have the bottom side. So ideally, what we would like to do when we're picking a Joseki is decide which one of these territories should I be playing toward, or which one should I more or less be deeming to be the correct side, or maybe not correct. Maybe that's a bad word. Maybe just saying like a good side for me to play toward. Um, in fact, there's nothing that says there's only one. Sometimes we could argue that two sides are pretty good for us. And if it's early enough in the game, any of them could be. Right? But how do I go about deciding what my good side is? I usually tell people it's a lot easier to answer that question with another question. And that's kind of the opposite. Where's your bad side? If you can determine that one of these three choices is a bad decision, we should not be playing there, you have suddenly chucked out roughly a third of all potential Josekis you could ever be considered, right? But it also sort of like gets to the question, okay, well, how do I determine what my bad side is? Aha. That will be determined by looking at the adjacent corners. What is happening in these two corners is going to help us decide which of these three sides is our good or bad side. More specifically, what our bad side is. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of spoil you with the answers. Um, I said there's like two things we need to think about. Primarily, what we need to be looking at would be a low solid position. Okay. If one of these corners has a low solid position that's sort of oriented toward the corner in question, we want to stay away from it. We do not want to play toward that low solid position.
And just to clarify for those who might be of lower ranks, when you say low solid position, you mean like third line position, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And without any visual, let's sort of talk through that. If our opponent is the one that has and again, this I didn't qualify that with a particular person or perspective. In fact, this idea is colorblind. It doesn't matter which of us has it. So it's easier to think about it though if our opponent is the one with the low solid position. Well, if I try to develop or play fourth line moves, is more or less what that means, toward my opponent's position, which is low, they are organically undercutting the position I'm trying to build. They didn't have to do anything special, right? So that one's easy. But if it's our own low position, oftentimes what's going to happen is either we're going to end up with a side of the board that is a little too flat, or it's going to be kind of misshapen, or more realistically, what's going to happen is for us to be able to actually build that entire side of the board, we're going to have to play inefficiently. That one's a little harder to understand. Um, but let's just assume what I'm saying is true. Okay, if we can take that as an axiom, we play away from low solid positions. That will be a basis of our intuition. Okay. Now the second one, because I said there are two indicators, the second one's going to come into play a little bit later, but it's actually even more intuitive. We should be playing toward open spaces, right? We,
Wow, that's like the
I,
opposite of my proverb today.
what crazy idea? That one that one should be more intuitive for a whole slew of reasons. One, if you just have a completely open side of the board, that's free territory. And in the opening, which is about the open space, we should be rushing to plant our flag in open spaces. Another really quick argument that you could make is if you're playing toward a side of the board that has more stones in it, well, now we have kind of a math problem where why would I play in a part of the board that already has stones versus playing in a part of the board that has virtually no stones in it? So we can very quickly, convince ourselves play toward the open space. That makes sense. That should be even clearer than my other indicator, as I'm calling it, of play away from low solid positions. Okay, so let's finally get into a board position.
Yeah,
Now, some of these,
finally.
I'm I'm probably gonna jump to the end. Maybe I'll click through some of these. I created some of these positions, and if I if I were to show you the sequence getting up to it, it might feel a little bit contrived. We don't really care about how we got here. We're here, and what are we going to do with it? So let's just look at this very first one. This is about as fundamental as I can make it. So the question is, so black has just approached our corner. We are white, and the question is, where's our good side? Is it the left side, the corner, or the bottom side? And before I said, maybe we can answer this question by saying, well, which one is our bad side? So what do you guys think?
I think that the
Wow,
hmm.
this is the easiest problem of the day, and you guys
Well, there's a
are
lot to think about.
hetating.
I
Well,
the
again, what were
my
my indicators?
my
What
initial
were
Well,
my
the left
indicators?
go ahead,
the
Neil.
left side I think is the better side than the bottom side. I think what I'm struggling with this one is I also think the corner it feels very valuable in this situation for white.
Again, I said you're not always locked into a position where there's only one good side.
Yeah, God, I feel like I'm just gonna be so wrong when I say this, but like I'm thinking of it differently, and mainly because I like can see the end position for the Joseki, where it's like, oh, can I take control?
Yeah, I'll give you control. I know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Where like if we go through like this normal Joseki here, I just feel like Black's position just looks a lot better to me, just because yeah, they're starting to like create this framework, whereas White just kind of feels. I mean, they have the corner, which is good, but there's not much more going on for it.
You're
I've
telling me you've never played this as white?
no. I'm saying, like, are you talking about this Joseki or this position?
This sure this position.
This position, I have before, but I feel like I hate it.
Hmm. I
Okay,
always like this position as white, because I find that the bottom side is not as scary as it looks in practice.
sure. It has invasion points.
Yeah.
It hasn't even really secured a whole lot of territory yet. There's four fourth line stones versus a single third line stone.
Okay, I gave you back control. This is probably the answer, though, isn't it?
I would actually argue, without even putting a single Joseki down, that all three are possible. This is early enough in the game where we could argue all three sides are potentially good sides. This is so early in the game. There's nothing compelling us to play a very particular way, or there's no real argument to be made that one is highly optimized versus another. What were my indicators? I said play toward the open space. The left side, the corner, and the bottom side are wide open. My other indicator was, which is the big one, play away from low solid positions. There aren't any. In our adjacent corners, there's a single fourth line stone. There's nothing going on in those corners. So it's totally viable that any of those three sides are totally legit.
All right, Octo. As we go through the rest of this, I'm only going to be thinking about the words you have said. Play away from low solid positions and
Yes.
play towards open space. Just forget everything else,
Yes.
and that's all I'm going to think
Please.
about.
I'm
Please
only
do.
gonna
That's
use the rules from Nilo's School of Go, which has its own. There's like 30 rules.
that's that is precisely what I want you to do. I want you to just humor me and take those two concepts as a straight up fact and let that guide your decision making. Okay?
Okay, here we go.
All right. So let's look at this next one. I'll play through a little bit of this one, which is actually this position. White decides to split, and then black approaches. So our cornering question is now the top left.
Mm-hmm.
So how should white respond to this approach move?
So white does not want to play towards low solid positions, which is what the bottom left corner is. So they want to play towards the open space. I don't know if this is a Joseki, but could you play F16?
Absolutely, Joseki.
My thought is that you could play something like F16. I still like C15 more because black is actually the one who's going to be like extending toward. Oh well, assuming black doesn't go for like avalanche or something, then black is actually the one who's taking the like less valuable left side in the like most commonly played Joseki. But I think
Right.
you could play F16 or E15, though. I don't like those results quite as much.
Yeah, I guess if I think more about like the C15 Joseki, you're not necessarily playing in that direction. You're playing for the corner. So
Correct.
therefore, that is also viable because kind of what you said, Neil. Black is the one playing towards the low, solid position, and kind of what you said earlier,
Right.
Octo. White is naturally undercutting black, so that is also an option.
If so both of you have brought up great points. Let's get into them one at a time. So first we were talking about um F16. And let's just play like the most natural looking sort of Joseki here, right? It's going to look something along these lines. White's going to get Sente to come back over here. So who do you like better here, black or white?
I like white a
White.
little bit more, but I think it's like relatively even.
Sure, sure, it is. Now, I mean, what we accomplished by this is not only did we get this really nice extension and approach move up here, now we have rendered the left side of the board useless, even useless for black. Like we already had our like settled position. Now black is in this place where they're not going to grow very much, whereas we're the one growing on the top side, right? And to talk about your points, Neil, this is going to be good. If we do try and go for this corner, this is going to wind up being a bad bad position for black, right? We can use the same logic for the other player, right? We just said the left side is not good because of a low solid position. That means it's not good for either player. So black shouldn't even play this way. Black absolutely should go into some kind of avalanche to avoid a low solid position. Now
Mm-hmm.
that's going to freak some people out. People are not going to be happy about that. And technically, this is not the only Joseki you can play. You don't have to go into an avalanche. We could get really wild with it and pull some Takamiya stuff if we really wanted to.
I
But
I mean, even like I know you said like you can go into an avalanche. I think most of these days people are going to decline it by connecting at C17, but that's fine because black is now going towards that top right side, right? So like
right,
that's still in black's favor. They're not going towards that low solid position on the bottom left.
correct. So okay, so good job. You guys did well. I'm going to slightly change this, and I would say based on the discussion we just had, this slight change is going to be pretty easy for you. So instead of the splitting move, now white is going to approach, and we'll play an old Joseki here.
Mm. I mean, I still like C15. I like C15 more now
Yeah.
because if black does go for some kind of avalanche, then now O17 is making the influence facing the top less useful because that side is harder to develop and because white can later shoulder hit that low stone to to reduce the amount of profit for black.
Yeah.
Okay,
To me, when I if I go back to what your words of like play away from low solid positions, well, that's on both sides. So then, as white, I'd be thinking, well, now I want the corner because there's not really any prospects anywhere else.
perfect. So both of you literally just argued both players actually. So that was perfect. Absolutely. Because of low, solid positions, the left side and the top side are not good for development. So we should just stick with the corner. We should absolutely just play, this corner Joseki. And for all the reasons we've already discussed, black can easily just go into some sort of it'll likely be a declined avalanche. Nobody plays avalanche anymore, right? But from White's perspective, specifically, the corner is the best place for us to develop.
Mhm.
Cool.
When you put Pagogo and I together, we're like 6 Dawn at least.
All right, let me look at the tree here. Is it this? Nope, nope. We gotta skip this one. Sorry. Uh, yes, I think it's this one. I know that looks wonky. Okay. All right. So now I'm gonna test you and see if you've been paying attention. This one is a little bit of a test.
And this is for where does white want to
White.
play? Yeah.
Again, black approached our corner. We're asking ourselves, what is our good side? Or more specifically, maybe what's our bad side?
I
Hmm.
would say our bad side is probably C6, like towards the bottom left side. But I think it's kind of up in like you could do either one. I think
Either
um,
one what?
playing like a Joseki to go in either direction.
Well,
Um,
there's three. There's two sides in the
sorry,
corner.
probably okay. Let me think about that again. Is there a bad side?
I'm gonna wait to give my answer until after Bigogo is done.
No worries.
Oh wait,
See, I worry you're trying to look at a bunch of Josekis, and that's not the point. We're not this isn't based off of Joseki.
right.
Joseki, so here's the thing. Joseki is just a tool, right? I say all the time we study Joseki in a vacuum. We play Joseki in board context, right? But the way we select the Joseki is first determined by the direction of play. We need to know which direction we should play toward, and then we choose a Joseki. You're trying to run through a bunch of Josekis to decide what looks good here, but that's backwards thinking. We should pick a direction first and then pick a Joseki.
I want to play towards the bottom left. Final answer. Locked it in.
Okay, so you're looking at a pincer of some sort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two space high pincer, obviously.
Mm. Yeah, I would say that top side is our worst side, left side is our best side because C6 is not strong, even though it's low, and I think that like the corner seems less valuable because that low, like light stone of C6, um, I think either player would get a greater benefit out of like following up on that stone, whether it be white helping that stone or black attacking that stone. So I'm gonna say left side is most important, and I like the idea of a pincer. Um, some kind of pincer seems reasonable to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like stuff like C15 I don't really like that much. F16 I don't really like that much, and there's probably other good options that I'm not aware of, but some kind of pincer
Yeah.
seems like a
Also,
good way to handle it.
to add to that, when I look at the stones, that like both the D17 and P17 stone are on the third line, so it's like very low and flat. Whereas with D17 and C6, there's some offset there, so kind of helps with our position. Plus, if you also count the distance between the stones, there's 10 spaces between D17 and C6 versus D17 and P17. That one has 9, so it's one more space. So more open space to play towards, right?
These are all fantastic arguments. I'm going to challenge you for a second, though. Um, you're saying you want to play on the left side. That C6 stone is low. Are we violating my indicator by playing a pincer?
You said it has to be a low, solid position. This isn't
Very good.
solid.
Very good.
It's
Very
a
good.
single
Holy shit.
stone octo.
I
Yeah.
thought I was going to get you. I thought I was going to get you with this one. You
Nope.
are
I'm listening to my sensei.
wildly perfect. Yes.
I'm listening to my
Yes.
sensei.
These are not low solid positions. These are singular stones, just like you said. Just like you said. Perfect. Perfect. Now, I would actually argue one small inaccuracy that was said. I would actually say that the corner is the worst side. And let's see why. Let's just see kind of a pretty standard Joseki. Black might go into something like this, and in going for the corner, we actually help black hurt our own stone. So going for the corner might actually be more detrimental than it seems. Playing for the top side isn't a bad idea. Um, there are some Joseki, maybe like an outside attachment, where we can sort of offset the fact that it's low, and we can build something big over here. But I do completely agree that the left side is actually the best side. Um, and let's just see. Again, I'm not looking for an optimized Joseki. I just want to show one Joseki to try and show you possibilities. I'm never saying, oh, this is how the game's going to go every single time. That's not what this is. This is just to, again, try and get you in a creative mindset. Let's say we play like this type of pincer or something. Okay. And we could get into um, this in fact is a Joseki. It might feel a little weird. Um, and now we can come back and play over here. So the idea, really the idea behind this pincer is that there's a helper stone nearby, right? It's not a low solid group, it's just a helper stone. So if we do pincer and some sort of fight happens, we have a little bit of support nearby there to potentially help us in that fight. But I'm just trying to convince us a little bit that this is totally playable. Not that this Joseki is ever going to crop up in your games, but it is a Joseki. Things could go this way, and this isn't the only Joseki you even have to think about, right? So good job,
Mhm.
you guys nailed it.
Yay.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have been completely looking at like initial Joseki choices. I also want to talk about sort of branching points in the middle of a Joseki where direction could be very critical. So I have a couple of those examples. I think this one. Ah, right. This one. Okay. So down here, black is do you know this one? What's this called?
Taisha.
Yeah,
Taisha.
yeah. Going for a Taisha, and white says, no thank you, not interested in Taisha. So we play out pretty standard declined Taisha Joseki. And now it's black's turn, and black very cleverly looks at the whole board and makes an outside attachment. A move we don't actually see that often these days. Um, White's going to Hani on the outside, and black pulls back. So now white is at a crossroads. And maybe I should give you a hint. I don't know. What do you think? Should I give you a hint?
No, no,
No hints?
No,
no
no.
hints.
No hints. Okay. So what should white do here?
Hmm.
Maybe I should give you a hint. Maybe you don't
I
know this
should say that
Joseki.
I don't like know it super well, but
Don't
I
give
know it
it.
a little bit.
Don't give us a hint.
I
Okay.
should I give my answer?
Yeah, I want to hear
It's
it.
this is not like okay. There's not a whole lot of like reasoning behind this. It's just of the moves that I know, it's the one that like makes the most sense to me, which is
Here, I can
014.
pass you. I can pass you control if you really want.
Well,
Did you say
I don't know
014?
enough of this Joseki to actually like play beyond that.
So you're saying 014.
Yes.
This push here. Okay. What do you think, Pagogo?
That's what I was thinking too. Mainly because the right side's just getting so big. I guess okay. Let's not even think about that. Let's go back to what you were saying. Play away from low solid positions. I guess there's not really a low solid position here for. Well, no,
Yeah,
I wouldn't say the
this
bottom side is solid, right? But then it's like, where's the open space? I mean, you could say the left for white.
maybe yeah. So yeah. So like this branching point idea isn't always falling in line with a low solid position.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is concerned with open space, and we're kind of concerned with a middle game direction idea that I kind of glossed over, which has to do with thickness, which I haven't even defined.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is a bit strange. That this is probably the most difficult problem because it's kind of an outlier that I didn't really prep you for. But what I'm trying to do is show like some creativity of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
Um,
so you like 014, you said.
Yeah, that was what I said. I mean, one move that I know exists is N16, I believe.
Correct. So that's our other option.
you said
I'm in
M16 or N?
Yeah,
N.
so we're kind of choosing between 014 and N16. These were going to be my hints, actually.
Okay.
So a tiger's mouth or this push, and we leave a cut behind.
Yeah. N16, in the context of what we're talking about, my initial thought was 014, but I think in a normal game I would just play like N16.
Interesting. So you guys disagree.
I
This is
mean,
great.
I don't
We're
know.
seeing the difference of perspectives.
014, yeah, I'm having a hard time wanting to play N16, but I don't I will say that I don't think either of them is like that bad, but I feel like there's just this sector line thing that I can't get past here. I like cannot I don't feel okay with like letting black get into a pushing battle with that giant wall.
And you would be correct.
Yeah.
So let's see that. Let's see how this Joseki should naturally evolve. We're going to get into something along these lines, right here, push, and then back.
Yeah.
So this sort of progression not only is staying consistent with this original outside move. The original outside move was meant to work well with this bottom corners position, right? So this whole thing is working pretty well for black.
Mm-hmm.
So how would it go if we play the other Joseki? Now black black doesn't really want to do something over here. It's actually in black's favor to go ahead and cut
Yeah, I was gonna say
and to
cut.
just yeah take this local gain, which will look something like this, and then white's going to get something.
But Octo, it's a very big corner that black's getting.
That's true. That's true. Um, White has started developing the top side really well, and black now kind of has some floating influence. So,
Mm-hmm.
and again, we're not looking at the most optimized Joseki choices per se. We're trying to focus on direction of play and just seeing what's possible.
Yeah, yeah. If we want to just also like highlight, because and I bring up the question of like, or not the question, but the statement of like, well, this is such a huge corner. It's like, look at this position, and if you click back to the other position where it's these two massive walls against each other, like I would rather black have that corner than to deal with what I'm looking at right now.
Right.
And again, like maybe this isn't all black's territory, but I mean, this is a difficult position to work with as white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of influence to deal with for sure. Okay, let's get into the next one. Ah, so in this one, black makes a really nice pincer, because we can say with this Shamari facing the right side, as Neil said earlier, from opening theory made easy, we know the direction that a Shamari faces is a pretty valuable side. So now black is making this pincer, helping to try and make something of the right side. So let's play through a pretty normal mainline Joseki. Here, and here. Okay. So now it's white's turn. What would you play as white? Do we know branching points in this Joseki? Or
Uh,
what is the next move that you know?
I think I know two moves.
Yeah.
Uh,
Unlike last time, there's an A and a B
yeah.
here.
yeah, is it like a choice between P6 and P3? Or am I wrong?
Um,
I might just completely wrong.
you those two moves are kind of Mii. Historically, we would play P3. P6 would be played after. But that's not what the second choice is. So let's just say P3 is
Okay.
one of the choices.
Mm, the other move that I
Is
know
it?
of is S7.
Yeah, I was gonna say turn at
Correct.
S7.
Yeah. So what would you do here? Maybe you don't know the full Joseki, but which direction feels better for white and why?
Mm, okay, well, I've got my answer. Do you want to say yours first, Bigogo, or do you want me to go?
Um, I feel like I would want to play P3 because I'm making a
Okay.
wall facing towards the D4 stone, which feels good. But if we play S7, I guess I'm imagining black is just going to crawl along that line along with white. And now their Shamari just kind of feels weird. I guess I'm not sure. Now I'm not sure. Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure on this one either, but I think for the most part, I agree with your overall like assessment, which I think I like P3 better, and my reasoning is that you know that would make white's position facing towards the bottom, which is very open, and then white has a high stone at D4 to work with. And the other thing is that even though you know black has this really has this Shamari that's very high, facing a strong position, and there's a decent amount of distance. The amount of stones that Black has spent to try and capture this right side is like they've really spent a lot of stones. So I would not want to like I'm happy with Black spending more stones just to get more of the right side, whereas I think doing a little bit more of an efficient move by having something facing this really wide open bottom side with much fewer stones and much more efficiency. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
Okay. Let's play that one out. So here we
I also
will
have no idea how S7 actually plays out. So,
right. So this is more or less the end of the Joseki. So my question is, do you still favor white? It is white's turn.
I still like white
Okay.
personally.
I do
I
think this
think
one's kind of tough.
white is not as thick as what I thought it was. Mainly because I think there's still some lingering Aji in the position
Absolutely. There
that
is a
that
small amount of Aji still in this
that
position.
makes it a
Whereas black's position doesn't have any.
yeah, it's very solid.
Like you could argue there's a co-threat over here, but it's not some lingering danger, really.
I think I would actually prefer black. I if
Okay.
white's position does not look as thick as what I thought it was going to be. Now that the stones are on the board.
Okay. This time, let's look at the other choice and let's see what you guys think. So when we turn here, um black actually wants to take P3 because white didn't play it. Because there's basically P3 threatens to capture these two stones, right? And the entire position collapses for white if white allows that. White is very much compelled to jump out. Now there is a little bit of ladder potential here. We're not even going to get into that. But after white jumps out, black needs to come back and defend the corner and make sure we capture these two stones. and now white is going to come over here and Atari. And without going any more, let me tell you, now black has to make a, or sorry, yeah. Now black has to make a choice. They either need to start pushing through here at A. Okay, so you can imagine now black's going to be the one getting some kind of wall here, kind of what we saw like with white in the previous one, or black is going to connect here at B, and this is going to lead to a complex fight. But let's just kind of pretend that we don't really care about that. Let's just sort of like analyze the position from here. Um, who do you like better?
I
Let,
I I think I
without
like
sorry
white
sorry.
more actually
Okay,
now.
let me rephrase what I was going to say. Without thinking about what the rest of the Joseki's potential
Hmm.
possibilities are, let's just say black has a tough decision to make between A and B. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. When I look at black's position, it's like black's gonna take this corner, but the what black has to worry about is the influence that white is going to gain on the outside worth more than this corner that he's about to get. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like yeah, you're not wrong. I think black has a tough choice between A and B, and if white can develop the right side more, excuse me, then that Shamari at P16 just looks a bit dumb almost, where it's like, what did you actually get to build with this? And it's nothing. Um, and if black builds towards the left side, well, there's a D4 stone there for white. So what are you gaining out of that? So like black's only prospect is really that corner. They're not going to gain much unless they can somehow gain something on the right side. But I think that's not really going to happen because if they connect at B7, white pushes at Q8, threatening to capture those stones, and then they're still null. They're going to live on the right side most likely.
Yeah, yeah. You have circled the point basically. If we go back and look at this one, the point here is that by just sort of blindly playing some mainline Joseki, we gave black a really easy right side. And we were arguing, well, we have a huge bottom side, except this bottom side is even bigger than the right side. This is 10 spaces, whereas this right side is only 8, which means this, even though we have Sente here, this bottom side is going to be harder to hold on to
Mhm.
because it's so much bigger. Whereas a slightly smaller space, even though it's still big, slightly smaller space will be easier to deal with somehow. And if you can imagine, if we try to come in here, well, this is kind of some micro thickness that black has made. We might accidentally give black an enormous corner while we get harassed. Right? So there's a lot of issues with the space actually being a little bit smaller
Mm-hmm.
because it's harder to invade. Whereas the bottom side is so much bigger, it's easier to deal with.
So from this position, let's say white has a stone at F3 as well. Does that change it then? Is it much easy? Is it a little bit easier to hold, or is it do we still have the same issue?
No, no. If we had something at F3, now we're looking at this distance. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. So it's about the same. It's about the same. We would actually prefer to have a stone right here.
Mm-hmm.
This would be more in line and more consistent with all of our stones.
Got it.
But
Yeah,
going
I was just gonna
one,
say, yeah, I
mhm,
now like now that I'm sort of seeing this other option, yeah, it does really feel like black got really good use of the Shamari, and this is kind of
right,
a small point, but like the fact that it is a one space high Shamari makes it even more like good for black. Like if it was, the fact that in the other version with S7, the fact that black has this high Shamari facing the right, and now there's really no development potential, makes it even slightly worse because that high Shamari like makes for a better development, whereas the corner is like a little more solid. So it feels, yeah, I'm now seeing the error of my ways.
Well, it is what it is.
Hmm.
Looking at this one, really the point was if we turn here at S7 and play into this, we are destroying Black's ideal, direction. They want to develop in front of their Shamari. Well, now we're getting a low, very near solid position. So we're completely screwing up Black's natural direction. Can Black go for the top side? Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask this question because this
Mm-hmm.
is like my lower DDK brain thinking this, but if white were to play S7, instead of black playing P3, like you said, it is needed per the Joseki. What if black like connected at Q7 or made like a tiger's mouth or extended at R8? How does this change things then? Is that like a blatant error by black?
No, if they connect at Q7, we can more or less like revert back into this position. Now imagine Black plays Q7. So all we need to do is get the rest of these moves in. So you can imagine oops, oops. You can imagine connecting here. We just start coming out on this side. Now if Black comes back, right? Like
Mm,
there's we were talking about a ladder issue. Let's just ignore it for a second. If Black comes back, now we can jump back out, and we're in the exact same position as before, except now Black has made the tough choice between P4 and Q7. So Black
got
is
it.
sealed into playing into this complicated fight.
Okay.
But hopefully, hopefully that one. I know some of these like branching point um, directions of play aren't following in line with my little indicators. But it is something that I wanted to point out. We're not just thinking about the initial direction. Sometimes in the middle of a Joseki, we need to make a direction choice.
Hmm.
So there are other things that we need to think about.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it also is a good thing to point out. Like you can have these little rules to follow for the most part, but like there's always exceptions, and you have to deviate and think a little bit more. And I think to kind of add to like your axioms, like you want to look at like essentially like the building potential between sides and how easy is it to hold and to destroy those sides, because like that was kind of an important point in this ending position is like, well, in one ending, black has the right side that's pretty easy to hold, and then white has the left side which is not as easy to hold. Or you have this ending here where white's gonna nullify that Shamari on the top, and white can still extend out towards his stone on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there an issue though if black played Q7 that you could just kill the R5 stones outright?
No.
Why is that?
These stones are going to die beforehand.
The R3 stone.
Yeah.
Right,
These stones will always
but
die.
I'm saying if after S7 you said, oh, like black could play Q7.
Oh, oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Um, I've
because
never
then I
even
think.
considered. Yeah, you're probably right. I've never even
Hmm.
considered that as a response. So,
Hmm.
yeah, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I was just checking.
Okay. The next two we're going to look at are actually positions from games that I've reviewed on my stream.
Oh boy, I
Right.
already know.
So we can. So this is a 9Q game. And then black plays here. So the person getting the review was white, and they played very well. We're going to look at a hypothetical example, but their opponent did play this move. What do you think about this move?
I think it sucks for black
Why?
because
I
they
agree.
just self-pincered. They They played into a
Yes.
pincer, is what just
They played
happened.
into a pincer. Are they playing toward open space?
No.
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So this is a pretty bad move. And I see a lot of low SDKs playing this way. Absolutely not. If anything, we should probably be playing from this side. You could even make the argument maybe play up here
You
at
keep saying
F17.
this and over here, but we can't see your cursor.
Oh,
So
I'm
you
sorry. I'm
you need
sorry.
to
I'm sorry.
draw.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we could play from this side instead, or we could play up here this approach move. Um,
Hmm.
but like I said, we're going to go into a hypothetical. So another move that I see low SDKs playing all the time. Let's pretend white plays this pincer. Now, now suddenly we're going to root for black. What should black do here?
Black should take the corner.
I agree. Take
Take
the
the
corner.
corner. Okay. I think that is possible. I would actually argue that a nice counter pincer would be pretty decent here
That's fair. That's fair.
because the left side is wide open. This is a huge side where there's nothing going on versus the corner. Even though white would be quite over concentrated in a position like this, white might actually end up building a decent bottom side out of it. But if we go into a counter pincer, maybe we can get into something along these lines, where we have naturally built-in Aji stones, a very very solid group that we're never going to have to worry about, right?
Yeah. I like it.
Hmm.
Yeah, this one's pretty nice. Also for viewers, counter approach. Maybe I was saying counter pincer. I meant to say counter approach. That's probably a word that I've or a term I've made up. I've tried to find it before, and if you look on like Sensei's library, they're just going to call it a double approach. But I think it deserves its own specificity because we're being more specific in that like a double approach typically is we've approached a corner, they did not respond to us, so we approached the corner again, right? But here we did elicit a response from our opponent, and it namely was the pincer. So for us to suddenly change directions with the C6 move, I think we can change the nomenclature to be a little more specific, and I like to call this a counter approach. But you won't ever find that anywhere else, is what I'm mostly getting at.
Hmm.
Okay, so that one made sense. That one was good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I guess,
Uh,
well, hold on. So you showed H3 being played and then how black should change their direction. What should white have done?
there are a couple of possibilities. White could just back off here if they really wanted to. I'm pretty sure the person for whom I was reviewing kicked.
Yeah, I
And
would have
they just
kicked.
took a very very solid corner here. And this is nice. This is a very strong way of playing,
Yep, I like this.
and it's very difficult. And because of this K3 stone, it's very difficult for black to make a nice base. They could make a very pathetic base at H3, kind of H4. It would probably be a lot better for them to just jump out, say like F7,
Hmm.
or they could leave it. They could just Tanuki, right? Okay, let's look at another review.
How many more do we got, Octo?
This will be the last one, and then there's one more thing I want to talk about
Okay.
with Joseki or pincers.
Okay.
So this was a two-stone game that evolved like this, and now the question is, where should black play? And I think I will give choices this time. Let's say like jump out, jump into the corner, or let's say counter approach high.
I yeah, I my answer, I feel like I immediately just wanted to counter approach on this one.
Okay. What do you think, Pagogo?
I don't know about the counter approach, mainly because the stones on the like left side are, I mean, that's pretty solid position. It is higher, but my initial thought is I would just want to play into the corner because jumping out does not feel good. I'm not keen on the counter approach either. I'm gonna say B.
This is actually the only one that I had AI check, and AI overwhelmingly wants the corner.
Yeah, well, AI of course is gonna want the
Okay,
corner.
Neil,
No, no,
don't be
the corner
upset
makes
because you
sense.
lost.
The corner makes sense, and let's just go through it. Why is the jump out bad? Well, typically we're either going to play kind of old school with a shoulder hit, or we're going to play, maybe more modern with a counter pincer. But the fact that white has this backup stone is kind of throwing all of any sort of advantage that black might have in a normal Joseki sequence is slightly diminished because of the presence of this one extra white stone. So jump out isn't great. The the counter approach isn't great because we don't have a whole lot of room on the left side. There's already an established position. It isn't low, but what are we going to accomplish over there? Like white could just very easily just split us. Let's just say they just decide to split us here, and now
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
we've got to figure out kind of a weird position. Whereas just very simply taking the corner, kind of going back to the indicators, in this case, we're playing toward the open space. The top and the left side already have quite a number of stones present, but we can just very simply take the corner, and that should be regarded as the open space, our best side, all these kinds of things.
Yeah,
I
okay,
will
I mean, that does make sense. Yeah.
I will say, unfortunately, the reviewee in question did play this move, but okay.
Yeah, it's a 1Q move right there.
Last thing I want to talk about. Let's do it this way. So I've been talking about pincers from the perspective that, oh, if you play a pincer, you're interested in that side of the board from which you pincered. Pincers are tricky. Sometimes that's not always the case. What we might actually want is to try and induce a situation where we actually are getting up on the fourth line on the other side of the entire corner. So we can see, maybe in some sort of sequence like this, we are very easily developing the left side of the board, right? So pincers can be tricky, and with that in mind, our opponent doesn't have to play along. They can actually try to resist us, right? And push us down into something like a really low position like this. So if we actually care about the left side of the board, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot by going along with white's resistance. So in turn, we need to resist. So we need to
Push and
play
cut.
into, yeah, push and cut. We're going to play into something like this. And let's say we play kind of old school, maybe something like this. And now we can again sort of develop that left side, right? But what is so fascinating about this stuff is we actually still have the option to go for the bottom if we truly wanted to, right? There are branching points where we have opportunities to change directions. Okay, so I'm trying to emphasize just how creative and how opportunistic Go actually is. And you want that. You don't want it to be so algorithmic, right? If it, or like conditional, if A, then B, right? You don't always want it to be like that. You need to look for creative ways of making the game interesting.
Yeah, if I wanted that, I'd go back to playing chess.
um, but yeah, that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to say for the opening. In general, we want to play toward open space and we want to play away from low solid positions. And if you can keep that in mind when you're trying to choose a direction, and a Joseki, you're going to find yourself getting into much easier middle games, making that transition, already having set up the board in a very nice manner. Your games are going to get easier, I promise you.
Octo, I think this is what I needed to get to 1Q, actually. So thank you.
I think this is what I needed to stay at 1Q for even longer. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Neil's just it's just maintenance for Neil. It's just consistently rusting.
Well, no, I was about to improve, but now I'm like ready to go back down.
Oh,
Because,
Nice.
there's a new idea that I have to digest and then that'll like
yes,
mess up
yes,
my game.
yes.
It's going to be great.
Yep.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks for preparing that. I did learn some new stuff. I feel like even though some of these principles are very simple, it is very easy to like overcomplicate it. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
the questions that I struggled with were ones where I was overcomplicating it, like being like, "Oh, this right side position, it's going to be less efficient because there's like too many stones," instead of just being like, um, yeah, this is you're this isn't working well with this high
hmm
Shimari.
I mean, even like the first problem, both Neil and I are like, interesting.
Yeah,
How
it's
could
just an
this
empty
play?
board. We're like,
Right.
Tengen?
Yeah. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
framing it in the sense of like, kind of follow these, you know, axioms you call them, and then, you know, see what you get off of that, and then build from there. Obviously, you can always deviate from what those are saying, but like I think it's like Proverbs. They're gonna do you right for the good amount of time, but there are occasions where you might need to rethink what's happening in the position.
Exactly. There aren't laws that we have to follow, that we're compelled to follow
Yeah.
all the time. These are just guidelines to help our creativity.
And I would say for those who might like explore some of the ideas that you laid out here, Octo, for those who are exploring that, like if you start thinking like, oh, I think this is a moment where maybe I can like deviate, don't. Just follow the axiom, and if it fails, that's okay. Then you can learn that like, oh, this is a situation where I went wrong. Like I needed to actually deviate. But if you're consistently thinking, oh, I should deviate, I should deviate, I should deviate, you're just you're not doing yourself a favor. You might as well fail by trying to follow the axiom than trying to like see if you found the one moment where like you can like go against what it's like saying.
Right.
This is
The
very,
the
very good advice.
the whole Joseki branching point, especially the examples that I gave you guys, those were not easy, right? And it took a lot of justification for us to finally come around to, okay, I like this one better than the other one. So it can be tough, and like you're saying, it can also be dangerous in the middle of a game. So you need to have some confidence that
Mm-hmm.
you have really justified it to yourself. This is the way to go.
It can be very frustrating when you have like multiple instances in a row of like following the proverb or the axiom and it's like wrong multiple times, but I do think ultimately in the long run it's like you will benefit by following it most of the time, and eventually you'll also learn what that exception is and actually how to apply it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I, this highlights like the idea. I know you kind of get frustrated at this sometimes, Octo, where like you'll watch like someone play a game, and like within like 30 seconds they're already like 20 moves in. You're like, you just blew past the opening. Like, did you even think about direction of play? And it's like, no, probably not. They just stuck to whatever Josekis they know, and they're like, all right, here we go from here. And then like,
Or more likely, they started a fight that's like dominating
Right.
every single move. Like there's suddenly no time to play in that open corner.
yes, yeah,
Right. That's like what I think of most when I think of Octo reviewing like DDK games, is being like, there's two giant open sides of the board.
Yeah, we gotta plant our flag. The opening is about the open space.
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, so if you see someone thinking a long time on like move 10, me, don't get upset. There's a lot of thought going into it because I'm like, there's so much happening already. So,
Yeah, that is definitely also like something that when you're like DDK, the moment that you sort of understand how valuable it is to play these like really big open sides of the board, it's like sometimes you can just, make these huge frameworks while your opponent is like busy capturing like one stone.
Mhm.
yes.
And then you very quickly get past that rank and you're like, okay, see ya.
Um, so I think that's just about wrapping it up. Is there anything else you guys wanted to cover at all?
Not for this. Ideally, we will sometime in the future have a direction of play for middle game, and it will be quite different. But I will still be breaking it down more or less to one or two axioms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think all of the thoughts I have about direction of play that are like important or relevant are all kind of getting into middle game, Like I
It
think we
it's
sort of
different.
covered the main opening stuff.
Yeah, which I
Yeah,
think we want to have probably a later episode about direction of play middle game, right, Octo?
yeah. It'll be a while. I gotta
Yeah.
do some work.
It'll be a
There's
while.
I think like I'll drop a little just reference here for anybody who wants to go check this out. But Yilun Yang, who wrote the book that you mentioned, the Whole Board Thinking with
Yeah.
Joseki, or he also wrote a great book called Fundamental Principles of Go. And one thing you can check out there if you're curious about the opening is he actually goes into every single opening move in the corner and what direction that's facing, and basically like what is 3-4 saying, what is 3-3 saying, what is 5-3 saying, and that can be pretty interesting. If you've never really thought about that, if you've never really thought about like why would you play a 5-4, like what would you be trying to do with that, then he really breaks it down well. So worth checking out if you're interested in more opening stuff.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh as you were like, what did it mean when he plays a 3/4 stone here? Because and both of you know it, there was a review with our good friend Max where he's like, when black plays the 3/4 stone, it says, I want to stone here. And we're like, yeah, no shit, Max.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. That's some five Don thinking right there. I was like, wow, I played it because I wanted to stone somewhere else.
Big brain.
All right, well, that's been Don in the queue. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for
Later.
having me, guys.
Bye.
See ya.